Hello and welcome to another episode of Rad TV UK. This evening we're going to be talking about Boston, what seems to have happened, what might have happened. We've got a terrorist who definitely is innocent, who's been in Guantanamo Bay for 10 years now. We're going to hear about how business lobbying shapes the European legislature, the laws and the regulations. We're going to hear about the secret courts, which have now been introduced in the UK. And we're going to hear about nuclear accidents, which not just in Fukushima as we saw in the last issue, but in Britain. 2 nuclear accidents in Britain just in the last few weeks. To kick off with, we've got a report from Tom Secker, who's a filmmaker, and he's something of an expert on the London 7/7 attacks. So let's hear Tom's take on the Boston episode.
Hi Fran, thanks for having me on. I suppose the first theory that came out about the Boston bombings, the marathon bombings in Boston, was that there was an exercise or drill running that morning concurrently that sort of replicated what really happened. And this was based on the testimony of a guy who was interviewed, a runner in the race called Ali Stevenson, and he said that he'd witnessed bomb-sniffing dogs and that he'd been told not to worry about this and that it was only an exercise. There was an announcement that there was an exercise. And a lot of people have kind of run away with this and taken it to mean things that Ali Stevenson didn't actually say. In particular, he was talking about this going on hours before the race, or at least hours before the bombings, and taking place at the athletes' village at the start of the race, not where the bombs happened at the end of the race. So I don't really find that theory particularly plausible. The next set of alternative explanations for what had gone on here focused around a series of guys who were photographed at the scene, both before and after the explosion, in the minutes before and the minutes after, who were wearing sort of black jackets and tan-coloured trousers. And one of these men was wearing a cap with a kind of skull logo on it. So people had been comparing this logo to those of other organisations, and it looks a bit similar to that of a mercenary firm called Kraft International. It also looks similar to the Navy SEAL Team 5 logo. It's since been realised and worked out and discovered that these men were likely, almost certainly, members of a civil support team, a weapons of mass destruction civil support team, who were there as presumably part of the huge security operation that was going on in Boston that day. You can even see photographs where they have the CST written on the back of their jackets, so it seems highly probable that that's what they were there for. And also the speculation that they were somehow part of a covert operation, that they were somehow there carrying out a US government false flag event. If there were covert operatives in the crowd, either handling the 2 guys who supposedly planted the bombs, or possibly even planting the bombs themselves, then they would have been disguised as ordinary people, just people there to watch the marathon. In the last couple of days we've had a different sort of theory presented to us, in that Debka have published an article alleging that these 2 Chechen brothers who supposedly carried out these bombings were actually double agents working for the US and Saudi intelligence as kind of penetration agents to infiltrate radical Islamic groups. Their story is that these 2 men went rogue for some reason and sort of betrayed their handlers and carried out a strike against the US. We've also seen on RT a few days ago an interview with the mother of these 2 men, and she's alleged that they were in fact being controlled by the FBI for several years prior to the bombings, because the Russians back in 2011 actually asked the FBI to investigate the older of these brothers, Tamerlan, and they did investigate him and they carried out an interview with him, but apparently found nothing. The US has been, and not just the US, but most of the NATO bloc has been using Islamic countries and Islamic groups and radical Islamism as a philosophy and as a militant activity against Russian interest and against Russian power for several decades now. So those are the sorts of different theories that are out there, but it's all kind of speculation at this stage, and we don't really know, and the only way to kind of get anywhere in this mire of misinformation and presumably disinformation as well is to just sort of press on investigating and keep looking for more information.
Well, that was Tom Secker's view. Here in the studio we've got Roy Hunter, who's been looking at this as well from Rad TV's point of view. So Roy, what would you want us to know about Boston?
Well, the thing with Boston is that there's an awful lot of information out there. There's hundreds and hundreds of people have taken photographs, videos on their cameras, and it's all circulating around the internet. And there's nothing you can actually get a grip on, but there's lots and lots of tantalising little bits out there just to whet your appetite. Theories and speculation, really. I mean, as we just heard with Tom there, you know, Tom has his own pet theory, and everybody has their own pet theory. But as I say, there's nothing really to get a grip on. We've got the family of the two lads that are the suspects. Yeah, the accused. The mother says that they've been controlled by, or they've been in touch with the FBI for 3 to 5 years. That's how long the FBI have been involved with the family and the two boys. And the mother said in a telephone interview that they've been controlling him every step of the way, and she believes it's a setup.
Every step of the way.
Every step of the way, she says.
And the suspects themselves have said that they have been set up.
Yeah. Johar, the younger of the two, the one that's still alive, on his Facebook, he Facebooked his father saying that he'd been set up. So that's.
And the latest report we have is that they have confessed, or the one who's still alive has reportedly has confessed.
I'm sure he has, or I'm sure that's the report. The reports say that, but of course, until we actually hear him say it out of his own mouth, and of course, he's apparently shot himself in the throat, so that's going to be very difficult for us to hear it from his own mouth, isn't it?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. And of course, they talk about taking these people to court, but as with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the 9/11 accused, it then becomes Guantanamo Bay, and then actually we're not allowed to hear the testimony.
No.
So it's I suppose it's possible that the claim that he's confessed is actually just an exaggeration.
Well, they can say it if they want, can't they? Because unless we get to hear him, get to see him, there won't be a court case over this. He's being designated as an enemy combatant.
Has he been?
Well, there's talk about it. It's still it's almost a week ago now that this happened, but everything's still very much up in the air.
If they find that their case is weak, they'll designate him as an enemy combatant.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
Stick him in Guantanamo Bay and just make the accusations. I noticed that President Obama said that he was guilty.
He did say that. Where's the justice in that? You know, there is no justice, is there really?
And he's legally trained, isn't he? I mean, it's pretty frightening that somebody who's.
Well, he knows as a lawyer that the American government really can do what they like these days. There's no comeback on them. They can. Yeah.
And then there was the issue of the rucksacks, the backpack. A picture of a white backpack.
Johar, the youngest one, the one that's still alive, who was supposedly planted the second bomb. The FBI have said that both rucksacks were black, and there are photos of Johar wearing a white. Yeah, we'll put them up.
Yeah.
Of wearing a white rucksack. There's also another photo of Johar apparently leaving with his rucksack, but there's again very dodgy picture.
Yeah. Then we've got the case of these contractors who were there, all with their standard uniforms, and somebody actually hacked into one of the mainstream media's Twitter account with this picture of one of the contractors arriving there with a rucksack and leaving without a rucksack, and some people have taken that to be suspicious.
Yeah, well, this group is somebody that the people like Alex Jones first picked up on when this first happened, and there was a lot of excitement about them being responsible, but that's kind of been debunked a little bit now, and there's not really a mystery. They were a civilian crisis team, basically, so those rucksacks would have been full of crisis preparation materials, first aid kits and
that's why
radiation monitors, things like that. So there's no mystery that the man's taken his rucksack off in the crisis, in the emergency, and then not put it back on. I don't think really there's any mystery there.
Okay.
There are a lot of these little mysteries. There's a lot of these things going around, but as I say, there's nothing you can really grip your hand on. But something I have found interesting is that in late 2010, the Russians asked the FBI to check out Tamerlan, who was the eldest of the two and the one that's now dead. And in early 2011, the FBI interviewed him and found nothing wrong with him, nothing suspicious about him. But then in 2012, he actually flew out to Russia and spent 6 months in Russia. There's a little bit of time missing there. He ostensibly went to see his family, but there's a few months either side that he never. He can't account for. So, he has been flagged up to the FBI, and the FBI knew that he was there. They know exactly who these boys were. So for the FBI, when it first happened, to release their photos and ask the public to help identify them is a bit disingenuous, really. They must have known who they were, I'm sure.
So I gather there's a bit of inconsistency over the stories of just how these guys were arrested and who shot whom and why one of them's ended up dead.
Yeah, there was supposedly a shootout with police, and the official story is that Tamerlan was shot, the eldest, the one that's dead now. He was shot, and then his brother in a stolen SUV ran over him in his getaway. But actually there is footage of somebody being arrested, which was supposed to be Tamerlan, and the police have got him stripped naked, and you can see him coming out arms like this, completely naked, and then put in the back of a police car. Both his mother and his auntie have both said that was him, that was definitely him. But if he was arrested and put in the back of a police car,
why is he
how come he's dead? How come his brother then apparently ran over him?
And then there was an issue about the brother as well.
Well, the brother was found hiding in a boat, but there's photographs of him getting out of that boat under his own steam. But obviously, he might have had a few little bullet holes in him or something, but he's obviously basically all right. But apparently he's shot as well. He's apparently shot through the throat. It just seems there's a very big inconsistency with both of them there, and it's very convenient that one's dead and the other one's shot in the throat and can't talk.
Can't talk. Yeah. And they went into an Israeli-run hospital or something, and they called in Mossad agents to help interview them. Right. And you can't quite understand why Israelis are being brought in to interview Chechen militants.
No.
But then there is a very close relationship, as we know, between Washington and Israel.
Yeah.
Okay. Another point I seem to remember talking about Israel, the Israeli-linked website Debka File.
Yeah,
they're pushing the story that these guys were trained up by the FBI and then betrayed them.
Well, I think it was more the CIA, really. The
CIA.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we got the 6 months of Tamerlan in Russia and Dagestan, which is the Caucasus, and Chechnya, which of course they're native to. And so what the Debka file is saying is that the CIA were running them and putting them into Chechnya to liaise and fight with the rebels there, because of course the Chechen rebels are America's way of causing trouble for Russia. So the Debka file are saying that that's what they were. That they were CIA-run agents in Chechnya, but they say that now they've turned on them. They've turned on the CIA, turned on the Americans, and have done this bombing. So that's the Debka file.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Roy. And now we're going to look at a terrorist who it seems definitely is not a terrorist, even though he has been in Guantanamo Bay for 10 years, just coming up for 10 years.